Good afternoon, my name is Dr. Rory Deverell. I'm a commodity market risk manager with INTL FC Stone, based here in Dublin. This presentation relates to the slides associated with our risk manager series. H17-1 is this particular presentation, titled A Look at the Black Sea Winter Wheat Freeze Potential and Price Risk. At this point in time, I'll ask you if you could take a few moments just to look over our disclaimer and review that in your own time. So feel free to pause at this point and review that disclaimer. Now, moving on to slide 3. The essence of this presentation is really quite simple. We are in an environment at the moment where there is quite a large volume of wheat available to consumers around the world from the main origins of wheat. Okay, so we're not short of wheat. That's undisputable at this point in time. And you can see in the slide on the left hand side that the supply of wheat is likely now to be something in or about last season, maybe a little bit less, maybe around the same, maybe a bit more. But this is going to be the second season in a row of very large wheat supply across the world. So there's no shortage of wheat, and that's undisputed here. And hence why prices have been reacting the way they have. A steady downtrend as we move through the harvest. Now, what's interesting about this season versus almost any other season is the dependence on Russia. And that's very evident in the second chart, where we've stripped out Russia and their production number. And when you look at the other key origins, and without Russia, it's actually the lowest level of wheat production amongst these key exporters since 2007. It's an extremely tight supply year when you strip out Russia. Okay, so that's not discounting the fact that they're there, but it is still making the observation that if for some reason we took Russia out of the equation, the burden of responsibility having to fall on the other origins suggests that they don't have that same price pressure as the Russian market. And that's extremely interesting if we were to try and think about how it is that we take Russia out of the market and what an environment in which that can happen. And of course it can happen because it's happened in the past. And there's really two key environments in which that occurs. The first environment, which is the least likely one, the first environment is where, for whatever political reason, Russia decide to implement an export ban on Russia. And they've done it in the past, and no doubt they'll do it again. But they've done it in the past when they've had poor harvest, like in 2010 and 2012, and they've implemented export restrictions. Obviously, this year is a year where they have a lot more wheat, somewhere around 80 million tons of production, and they may well start to approach 20 million tons of carry-out stock by the time everything is said and done. So they're not going to be short of wheat this year. So, and inflation now with crude oil prices a little bit better supported is not an issue for them. So it's unlikely, I would say, not impossible, but unlikely that that's the environment in which Russian wheat becomes unavailable to the world market. So we're left looking at and considering the other environment in which Russian wheat gets taken out of the supply matrix. And that's one where logistics come into play, and for logistical reasons, the Russian exporter can't move his wheat to the port. Now, of course, there's other ways that they can export via truck and via rail, but looking specifically at the Black Sea, it has happened in the past that essentially the entire Black Sea or most of it, can freeze over and inevitably restrict the movement of vessels in and out of the Black Sea ports. So on chart 4, what we try to do is give you an indication of what is this window. What is the window in which this potentially can happen? So it's pretty clear that it's in that window of December through to early March is the period in which the deepest, coldest temperatures are achieved in the Black Sea region. So that's the window, the time frame in which we have this potential risk. We're not in it now, but we're approaching it. And what we're looking for after that is that within this window, how many times or how often in the past do do we get extended periods of these extreme colds of -15, -20, -25, -30, -40 degrees Celsius in that region. And that's an extended period of those types of cold are what we're really concerned about from a real short to medium term logistical issue in Russia and the Black Sea region generally. So when we went back through that and looked through the last 20 seasons of temperatures and how they've evolved, and really trying to identify extended periods of these cold, it's quite rare. It's not that often that it happens, but it can happen. The most recent example is 2011-12, where you can see that there was quite an extended period of this deep cold, leading to significant freezing of the Black Sea region, including the ports, and inevitably that restricted the availability of wheat to move out of the Black Sea ports of Russia, Ukraine, Romania and Bulgaria. And when we try to visualize or get a feel for the extent to which the market reacts to this sort of scenario, when you look at futures price movements in 2012 during that freeze period, it's very clear that as temperatures plummeted in the Black Sea region, futures prices reacted almost immediately, with prices moving up €20 per tonne during that window in which temperatures declined as significantly as they did. So that was the price movement back then. The interesting thing, if we think back to our very first chart and the reliance the world has today on Russian wheat and the relatively low level of production achieved by the other exporters to which the world would have to rely on in such an environment for those few weeks where Russia have significant logistical issues potentially, is that you could argue that if that's how prices moved back then, well, what's to say prices don't move more extremely this season, given the reliance on Russia and the implications if they're taken out of the market. So in summary, I would say there's a window here from December through to early March where there's the potential for Russia to have significant logistical issues. The risk, historically speaking, is low, but the price implications are quite significant if it does occur. Please feel free to reach out to us here in Dublin or anybody in the INTL FC Stone team across the world if you have any more questions. Also, feel free to email us directly at marketreports@intlfcstone.com. Thank you.